All right, we have found Senator Blunt in his secure bunker as he is roaming the state on the last days of the election. Good morning, Senator Blunt. Welcome back to Big 550 KTRS.
Good morning, McGraw. Good to be with you this morning.
All right, so, Senator, at some point, regardless of who wins, someone's going to have to legislate and actually work with the other side. With this toxic election being so nasty, how is anybody going to put Humpty Dumpty back together again and work together after this election?
Well, I think the start of that is to find the things that you can do. You know, Republicans and Democrats disagree on a number of things. Individual members of the Senate disagree on a number of things. But I think the way to start that process is to find the things you can agree on. I've got a record of doing that. Senator Brown, a Democrat from Ohio, and I got what I think was an important bill passed that the president signed on advanced manufacturing. Senator Stabenow from Michigan and I got a bill passed that I think a lot of people in the mental health community think is the biggest step forward in mental health in 50 years. The committee that I now chair, we eliminated programs so we could have the first increase in healthcare research in 12 years. And the second year I chaired that committee, it was the first time in 7 years that there had been a bipartisan vote out of that committee to move forward. And when we did that, we were zeroing out the 30 programs. Now, when you can get Republicans and Democrats to zero out 30 programs that were spending over $1 billion so you could put it in something that was a more important priority, these days that's a pretty big accomplishment. But all those things happened in the last couple of years, so it's possible to get things done. I do think the Obamacare disaster means that we have to work our way back to a healthcare system that works better for families and gives families and individuals more choices. And so there's a lot of work to do, and hopefully that will drive the new Congress and the new president to try to solve these problems. One
of the things you do not get credit for, but I know you were very instrumental in, was the whole Zika virus funding.
Well, that's a good point, and frankly, McGraw, I think a lot of people in the middle of running for re-election in this kind of environment, when they say, okay, can you put this package together? Can you look at what the president's asked for and figure out how much of it is justified? I think a lot of people would have said no, but Senator Murray and I were able to work through that to get that done, to look at the $1.9 billion the president asked for and figure out that about $700 million of that wasn't necessary. It was a new building that obviously wasn't part of the Zika crisis. It was this and that. There was money left over from the Ebola effort. And so, we came up with a package that was about 3/4 of what the president had asked for. And I think it is adequately and moving forward. And interestingly, in our papers in our state, even though they were no more affected by Zika than papers in say New York City, I've got a lot of credit there for working through that problem. Not much credit here.
Well, speaking of credit, you turn on the television, you turn on the radio, and your family, your wife, your children, it's not your policies. It's turned personal. Everything's turned personal. How do you handle this campaign being so personal?
Well, I think I told my wife the other day, I've voted thousands of times in the Congress, and apparently there's nothing wrong with any of those votes. There's a reason that Democrats don't want to talk about my voting record, because it's a voting record that Missourians would agree with, and my opponent wouldn't, and Senate Democrats and those national groups funding my opponent wouldn't, but they know that Missourians would. And, these charges are just not true. After the election 4 years ago, Harry Reid was asked, what about those things you said about Mitt Romney that weren't true? And his response was, we won the election, didn't we? There was no, I wish my facts had been better. I wish somebody would have checked that a little more thoroughly. The only response was, we won the election, didn't we? And this election's about the majority in the Senate, in all likelihood. I think there's a great likelihood that if I'm elected, I'll be the 51st Republican. That makes a big difference no matter who's elected president and how we move forward on the Supreme Court. And so we're playing for big stakes here, and the other side knows it, and they know they can't talk about how I've served Missourian, so they just have to make stuff up, and it's outrageous, but hopefully there's enough other outrageous stuff going on that people will figure out that these things couldn't be true. They just would strain anybody's credibility that these things they say are true. You know, my son Matt, former governor, runs an organization of the 3 U.S. auto companies really focused on trade policy. He told me he hadn't spoken to a member of Congress about an issue in over a year. Travels all over the world talking about currency rates and things like that. He files just in case he happens to talk to a member of Congress. My wife is in charge of the global government affairs for Kraft Heinz, a company that has 2,000 employees in our state and doesn't lobby the Senate. You know, it's two of my children are lawyers, and they occasionally have clients that they do work for, and they file.
Senator, I asked your counterpart, Senator McCaskill, this question. I'll ask you the same question. What is it that we don't know? What is it about being a senator, about the election, about the campaign that we don't know that we should know?
Well, I think you and I have talked about a couple of those things today. The efforts to reach out, the importance of what happened keeping NGA, the National Geospatial Agency, in Missouri, what can happen in opportunities as world food demand doubles in 35 or 40 years, how important it is that we pay attention to the transportation network. We fight to keep our electric bills low so people will want to make things here again. These regulators are out of control, and I've been one of the leading fighters both against the foolishness of the way Obamacare was put together, but also against the proposed rules that would double our utility bills for the average Missourian in 10 or 12 years, the rules that would put EPA in charge of anything involving water. That's every building permit, every determination to set a utility pole, whether you pave your driveway or not. We have lots of opportunities out there, and we really need to be focused on more jobs and less government.
I know.
We need, by the way, McGraw, we need every government regulation we absolutely have to have. We don't need a single regulation that we don't absolutely have to have.
Senator Blunt, I know you're busy and I know you're loath to get into business, but is there any way you can force Major League Baseball to put Game 7 on at a time when people are up and able to watch the end of the game as opposed to midnight?
Well, if the Cubs are going to win, I don't know. Midnight might be the next time.
All right, fair enough.
Good to talk to you.
Senator Blunt, thank you very much. Safe trip on the road. There you go.
You bet.
Senator Blunt here on the Big 550 KTRS.
Traffic here.
All right, let's check.